where you can see the first light setting in because I wanted to give a feeling of us being on Mars. And I started traveling across, taking photographs of ports. And this is Doravar Port, and it has really stood the test of time through different rulers. And so I tried to continue telling the narrative of the land that we came. And this is a photograph I took a few weeks ago. It's something very close to my heart. By now, it is known that I absolutely love photographing old places, old doors. And somebody sent me a direct message on Instagram, and she said to me, "You must visit my village. It is in a place called Hazro, which is 1 hour away from Islamabad, where I live." And I decided to check it out. But when I went there, I was very disappointed because all the places that I was looking for had been demolished or were decaying really badly. And a friend of mine there said, "I want you to see one place, a library." So I said, "How can a library be interesting?" And he said, "It's a wooden library dating back to 1932. And so I decided to check it out. This was the entrance of the library. And when I went inside, it was full of books, and it had a copy of the Quran, which was about 600 years old, and it was completely handwritten. And I decided to go back there using candles. To be very honest, I was inspired by Harry Potter. And with candles, I tried to show it in a very different light. And so the owner of the library, very gracefully agreed to pose for me. And once again, coming to Harry Potter, that was my Dumbledore. And through light, I wanted to show how fire can change everything. And this is the ninth highest mountain in the world. This is called Nanga Parbat, the Killer Mountain. And this is the first night photograph that I took during night time. And I will never forget that moment. I could not see a thing. I was hundreds of miles away from this place. And this is a very famous mountain where climbers from around the world go. And so I put it on long exposure for 30 seconds. It was always out of focus. It was never the right color. And finally, I got it right. And I started jumping in celebration, and my tripod slipped, and so did I. But thankfully, the camera got saved. And this photograph was taken 10 years ago. So this is a place called Xposure, which borders Hunza in North Pakistan with Afghanistan. And this is a cave which is 300 years old. And I attempt to explore a little bit of history and try to bring it back to life. So there's a story that there was a village and there was a wedding going on. And a man came dressed as a beggar, and he wanted to test the morality of the people. And he started going house to house, going from door to door, begging for food and for money. And nobody was giving him anything, nobody was being kind to him. So he decided to go to this cave where an old lady lived. Now this cave is called Kumpir Dior. Kumpir Dior in Wakhi language means cave of the old lady, old woman. And over there, she was very kind to him because nobody would ever pay her a visit. She gave him everything she had, milk, money, food. And he told her that, tomorrow, just stay inside your cave and watch out. And the folklore has it that a flood came and wiped out the entire town. Only this cave survived. And I was looking around, folklores have so many layers. You don't know what happened in real history. But I saw that there was a river right next to it. So there must be some flood. So I went inside and I decided to ask a student of mine to build a fire to bring it back to history, just like the library in Hadro. And this is a place which is like second home to me. This is also in Hunza, and this is in a place called Gulmit, which I have come to know as the second home. And passing through, I didn't even want to take a picture of the ship. I just wanted to take a picture of the door, and the door just flew open because of the winds, and the ship just passed through. And they asked, "What is this photographer taking a picture?" And they just stood there. And that was a very lucky shot. And over there in that place, every day you wake up, you will always see this place. And around the world, it is known as Pachu Cones. And I like to call this the throne in the mist. And you go lower down, and if you look at the morning light, it's absolutely beautiful. It's the most beautiful thing I've seen. And from sunrise to sunset, I would explore the place in every season. Now, this place is right next to the sheep garden, and this is a picture very close to my heart for different reasons. You see, I posted this picture on my Facebook a couple of years ago, and a friend of mine asked me to post it on her wall, and I asked her why. I did post it, but she had a reason for it. And she said because she had stage 4 cancer. And she said, this photograph gave her hope that if her time in this world would not to be, it would look like a door to heaven for her. And if she lived with, by the grace of Allah, she did. And she said she had this place to look forward to visiting. And I absolutely love photographing the architecture there. Now I will take you down south shortly. Actually, in the winter, it is minus 35 degrees. So what happens is that every year it gets even more and more cold. And minus 35 degrees is no joke, because it is so cold that the water pipes are completely frozen. So the locals have to go to the river, break the ice, and then get water from there. And I'm attempting to document that. And over here, this is one of the locals bringing wood. And down south, I would take more portraits. Because you see, one of the reasons I also like photography is because I think like art, it transcends all barriers. So, because I can't speak the language of portrait location, but photography is something which really gelled us together. I did not even ask them to, pose this way. They just knew, and they just stood right next to the light, and they sit down south in Sindh. And then the most populous province in Pakistan is Punjab, and this is in the old city of Lahore, where I have also attempted to document history and bring some old buildings back to life. And this is a celebration going on. It was a Jeep rally. So I wanted to mix the contemporary with the old. And this was at the shrine at the Festival of Light, and this dervish was just dancing around. I decided to capture him. I absolutely love going to shrines across Pakistan because they're so full of color. A lot of people find solace over there. And to find the interaction is beautiful for me. Because it doesn't matter what faith you belong to. Everybody go there, and everybody has their own form of connection to the saint buried in those shrines. And this is in Balochistan, which is absolutely beautiful. And it is so much to see over there. And there is the reason I'm showing you this, not only because it looks like a sea of lights during the night time, but in one of those mountains, there is a whole hill called Jabal-e-Nur, the mountain of the Jabal. And inside there, this is a whole cave which stores copies of Quran. And it has caverns and caverns of it. And I found that amazing. And this is something very different. This is a salt mine in near Islamabad. To me, it looked like a dragon's eye. Now, the project which is the closest to my heart was a book called Dharkan. When I was in college, I wanted to change the narrative of what Pakistan was at that time. And so I decided to go to this place called Sawat. And Sawat has seen a lot of terrorism. It's safe now. So I went to that door, and somebody said that this was the first door the Taliban broke into. And then when they were flushed out, then the door was painted with a flag. And this was the story of every door. And this is not the reason I've chosen this door. When you see the flag, you have a different perception. And I wanted to change that perception by just acting as a doorway to celebrating unsung heroes, such as sanitation workers. Do you have human interest story there? This is a story of real struggle, real resilience. I remember one day I was walking in Karachi, and there was an open manhole, and I saw that there was a lot of water coming out, and I decided to check it out. And there was a man, his head was popping in and out, and he came out completely covered in muck. And I decided to sit down and ask him a few questions because I had never seen anything like it. You see, with my hearing, I lost my smell. And everybody who was walking by was keeping their distance. But I could not smell, so I could come close. So I had asked him this. And he said, I clean gutters for a living, and I get about 5,000 rupees, which is $50, 50 US dollars per month. And this is the most dangerous profession because, these are it's a manual drainage system, so it has to be cleaned up manually. And it's a story of struggle. Because inside those drainage, you have acid, you have so many things that put your life at risk. And so one day I asked him, you have any dreams, aspirations? And say, for my children to go to a better school. And this is why we do this. So if we don't do this, then who will? And I see them as the vein of the society. And then he told me, when I die, I want to be buried by one man. And that man is Abdul Sattar Reddy. Abdul Sattar Reddy if not the world, Pakistan's largest ambulance service. He passed away a few years ago, unfortunately. A lot of people have titled him the Mother Teresa of Pakistan, but he has his own story. You see, when he was young, his mother could never, his mother had a lot of physical challenges, and he was always looking after her. And one of the many things that AD used to do was also to pick up unidentified bodies which fell into the gutter. And until his last breath, he actually used to come out on the street and ask for money. They have an ambulance service, they have orphanages, and they have animal shelters. And they're doing some tremendous amount of work, and he is a hero over there. And then you have people like Shima Karmani, who is a classical dancer. About 40 years ago, she said Tehreek e Nitwan, which means the women's movement. And she actually wanted to keep the art and culture alive. You see, for a time, arts and culture was not as open. So she protested that by dancing in public, holding classical dances. And what she would do is she would also go to villages to tell the story of some of the issues through dance and performances. And 2 years ago, she actually led the Women's March in Pakistan. And age is no barrier for her. She performed every day around the world. And then you have more known people like now Prime Minister of Pakistan. And I had been photographing him for some time. So I'm just showing off a little bit here, so bear with me for a second. I met him for the first time in 1994 when he came to my school. And so now fast forward many years later, I photographed him for my book. And he's a very interesting person to photograph, but he's very camera shy. And I want to tell you a little bit about the pop culture of Pakistan as well. In 1971, there was one man who came from East Pakistan, which is now Bangladesh, and he came with one guitar case and a passion to sing. And he used to sleep in a park, and he used to just sing and get a free meal at a cafe just for performing. And he became very famous and went on to become one of the pop music founders in Pakistan. And when time came for him to look for musicians to perform with him, he started looking around and he found one guitarist who was Amir Zaki. Amir Zaki also, sadly, he also passed away a few years ago, but he was one of the most amazing musicians that the country had seen. And I noticed that, both of them were together. This was in 1984 or 85. And I realized that I had photographed both the men and decided to reunite them almost 30 years later. And the tune was exactly the same. And I have attempted to explore the contemporary history of Pakistan as well through this music. And now I'll tell you about something which I have just completed. You see, my grandmother's only best friend in life was a Zoroastrian, a Parsi. And although they lost contact after 1954, she still considered her best friend. And she used to tell me about the Parsi rituals, about the culture and everything. And a few years before I was born, the man with the beard is my father. And the man next to him is Ronnie uncle. My father had abdominal tuberculosis, and post-surgery he lost a lot of blood, and the doctors needed 2 bags of blood. And here's the interesting thing. Uncle Ronnie's sister was a doctor, and she always used to get free hospital supplies, this immunity, thing. And he used to have it like candy. So that's because of that, his blood used to be very strong. And he had O positive. So he was my father's best friend, Ronnie uncle. And he gave him that blood. Because of him, my father survived. And, since a very young age, then I had this notion that no matter your caste, your faith, your creed, all blood is the same. We are all of humanity. And that's what inspired me. So growing up, we had a lot of exposure to going to Christmas parties or Easter Mass. And so I would take photographs of, churches, of Easter Mass, or of a Kalash person. This is a very indigenous community. And I photographed her over the course of 6 years. And now she has adopted me as her grandson. And she's one of the most popular faces in Kalash Valley. And this is one of my most favorite subjects. I was taking pictures of the Parsi community, and this lady was sitting over there. And I took out my lens, and she went inside the house, and she came out with one railing. And I thought maybe she was going to beat me up with it, or she was going to throw this at me. Fortunately, she started hitting the railing, and 40 cats came. And she looked after all the stray cats in the area. And she told me she used to be a banker, and now she looks after all those cats. And so I took photographs of rituals or rites and cultures of different religions. And to take this picture was not easy. You will know why. Fortunately, my camera survived. So, but my lens did not survive so much, but it was a lot of fun to capture that. The interesting thing is, when I got all of that color, it was so hard to wash off. So when I went to my aunt's house, I asked her, how do I clean it? So she gave me a bottle of turpentine oil. I tried doing that. I nearly burnt myself. And then I went to a Parsi friend who gave me a handmade soap. And when I tried that, the color went off. So that transition from fate to fate was very interesting. And then I took photographs of different rituals. They were the spring festival of the Sikh community. And now this is the 550th year. It is a pleasure for me to talk about this book, especially in the year of tolerance. And, it has been a journey for me to understand people better. If I speak to anybody, I will understand you more if I take my hearing aids off, because I understand more by the body language, by the subtleties of human nature. And photography is something which transcends all barriers. Photography is the language of one. So thank you very much, and I hope you've enjoyed the journey. Thank you.